Welcome to Soft Sleep Tales, a channel where timeless stories, gentle narration, and quiet atmospheres help you drift into rest. Before we begin tonight's tale, I'd love to know, where are you listening from? Share it in the comments below. It's always wonderful to see our little community stretching across the world. Now, it's time to get comfortable. Settle into your bed or favorite chair. Close your eyes. Take a slow, deep breath. Let the day melt away. Allow my voice to carry you softly into sleep to a place where imagination flows and dreams begin. The station at Ashbourne Junction is the kind of station that appears on maps without being sought. It sits between two larger towns, neither of which needs it particularly. And yet, it has been here since 1863, its stone platform worn smooth by more than a century of arrivals and departures, its single lamp casting the same amber circle onto the same stretch of stone that it has cast on every winter evening within living memory. There is a waiting room with a bench, and the bench has a particular quality of having been sat on by a great number of people who were all waiting for something slightly different. A woman in a coat, the color of old moss, is reading a paperback she has already read twice, and is reading again because it is the kind of book that rewards the third reading more than the first two. An elderly man with a brown leather bag on his lap is looking at something in the middle distance that no one else can see. A child of 7, belonging to the station master perhaps, is standing very close to the yellow line at the edge of the platform and has been told twice to step back, and has stepped back twice and has drifted forward again in the distracted way of children who are thinking about something else entirely. You are at this station. You have been here for 18 minutes, which you know because the clock on the wall is of the institutional variety that moves in visible ticks rather than a smooth sweep, and you have been watching it tick. Your bag, a dark blue canvas holdall that has accompanied you on other journeys, is on the bench beside you. Your ticket is in the inside pocket of your coat. The coat is buttoned against the platform chill, which has the particular quality of platform chills everywhere, cold enough to notice, not cold enough to be distressed about. You are not in a hurry. This is the important thing about this evening, the thing that separates it from a great many other evenings. Somewhere in the day behind you, in the hours you have folded up and put away, you had decided that tonight was a night for the night train, not for the express, with its fluorescent lights and its announcement boards and its brief, efficient passage from one city to another. Tonight was for the slow train, the one that takes the long way, the one that stops at Ashbourne Junction and 3 places after it before arriving, eventually, at the coast. You have not been to the coast in some time. You are going there now. The lamp above the platform flickers once, the way lamps at small stations sometimes do in November when the wind comes from the east. It steadies. The elderly man with the leather bag looks up, then down again. The woman in the moss-colored coat turns a page. From somewhere down the track, not yet visible, but audible if you are paying the right kind of attention, comes the first low sound of the night train. A resonance more than a sound, a vibration that you feel slightly more than you hear, the way you sometimes feel music from another room before you identify it as music. The train is coming. You pick up your bag. The night train arrives without drama. This is one of the things you have always liked about slow trains. They do not perform their arrivals. They come in at a sensible speed. They stop without lurching. They open their doors with a mechanical exhalation that sounds almost like relief. The carriages are older than the rolling stock on the express lines, their interiors warmer in colour and somewhat worn in the way of places that have been genuinely used for a long time. You step on. Your carriage, see, as printed on the ticket, has 8 compartments, the kind with slide-in glass doors and bench seats facing each other, each seat covered in a fabric that was once burgundy and has become something softer and more ambiguous with time and use. The lighting overhead is the low amber of a lamp rather than the flat white of fluorescence, and it casts everything in the carriage in a tone that is conducive to certain kinds of thinking and unconducive to others. Not good for sharp attention, very good for the slow drift of the mind that happens when you are warm and in motion and have nowhere you need to be for the next several hours. The compartments are mostly empty. You pass a man in a grey suit who has fallen asleep with his chin on his chest and his briefcase beside him like a small, loyal animal. You pass a compartment in which a teenage girl is listening to something through headphones, her eyes closed, her expression one of careful concentration, as though the music requires something of her that she is prepared to give. You pass an empty compartment and another, and then you find the one you want, the last compartment in the carriage, slightly apart from the others, with a window that faces the direction of travel and a small reading light fitted above the right-hand seat that someone has left on, casting a narrow beam of warm light across the seat and the wall, like a lamp left burning in a house for someone expected home. You slide back the glass door and step inside. You put your bag on the overhead rack. You sit down in the seat beneath the reading light. You unbutton your coat. The train, which had been still while you found your place, begins to move. A small, almost imperceptible increase in motion, the kind that a sleeping person would not feel, that you feel only as a return to something that had been briefly paused. The platform of Ashbourne Junction slides past the window and disappears. The amber lamp becomes the last visible thing about the station. Then it, too, is gone, and outside the window there is only the dark, the particular dark of countryside at night, which is not the dark of a room with the curtains closed, not the dark of a city at 3 in the morning, but the deep and various dark of fields and trees and the hedgerows, moving past at the speed the train decides upon, which is unhurried and sufficient. You lean your head back against the seat. The train moves through the dark. There is a particular quality to darkness seen from a moving train at night. It is not static. It moves, or rather, it appears to move, the way reflections move on the surface of a river even when the river beneath is running very slowly. The dark outside your window is layered. Close to the glass, there is the rushing dark of the embankment, or the hedge, or whatever is immediately beside the track, passing so quickly it is more texture than image. Further out there is a slower dark, the dark of a field or a hill, moving at the pace of something that knows it has time. And furthest out, the dark of the sky, which does not appear to move at all, which is simply there, the fixed point against which everything else locates itself. You watch all of this without trying to make sense of it. This is the skill of travelling by night train, if it can be called a skill. The willingness to let the landscape be incomprehensible, to stop asking where exactly you are and what exactly is passing, and to simply receive the dark as dark and the motion as motion. There are lights occasionally, a farmhouse a long way off, its windows yellow, a village whose name you do not catch, a cluster of orange street lamps, a pub with its sign illuminated, a car waiting at a level crossing with its headlamps, patient and still, a church tower, pale grey against the slightly lighter sky. These things appear and are gone before you have fully registered them, which is as it should be. The night train does not slow down for things you might want to see properly. It carries you through them at its own considered pace, offering them to you briefly and then taking them back. You are not sorry about this. You have, over the years, come to believe that there is a particular usefulness to beauty that passes before you can hold it. It requires you to pay attention in a different way than beauty that stays, not the sustained attention of someone studying a painting, but the quick, open, almost bodily attention of someone watching something move. It wakes something in you that slower looking does not quite reach. The train goes over a bridge. Below briefly, you see the shine of a river, just the surface of it catching some ambient light. A band of silver in the dark, there and gone. You find yourself thinking of other rivers. Not any river in particular, but the idea of rivers, the way they run through landscapes that would otherwise be still, the way they carry something from one place to another, the way they have always run and always will, long before this train and long after, through weather and season and the slow changes of the land. You let the thought run where it wants to. This is what the night train is for. He appears in the doorway of your compartment at some point after the river. You have lost precise track of time, which is one of the kindnesses of long train journeys. And he is a tall man of approximately 60, wearing the dark uniform of the railway company with the small addition of a scarf of his own choosing, navy blue with a thin stripe tucked into the collar in a way that suggests someone at home thought about the weather before he left. "Ticket, please," he says, and his voice has the quality of voices that have been doing a specific thing for a very long time. Unhurried, clear, with a slight rise on the please that is not quite a question, but acknowledges that you might be searching for the ticket and that he is prepared to wait. You find the ticket in your inside pocket and hand it to him. He looks at it, not briefly, the way conductors on faster trains look at tickets, but with a small moment of genuine attention, the way a craftsman looks at work that another craftsman has produced. "Witstrand," he says. "That's the end of the line tonight." "I know," you say. He hands the ticket back. He marks something in a small notebook he keeps in his breast pocket. He is about to move on to the next compartment. But before he does, he pauses, just slightly, and looks at the window and the dark beyond it, and then back at you. And something in his expression is not quite a smile, but is in the vicinity of satisfaction, the kind that comes from doing something you have done many times and finding that it is still worth doing. "Good night for it," he says. It is not quite a statement and not quite a question. "Yes," you say. He nods, slides the glass door closed behind him, and continues down the carriage. You listen to his footsteps recede, one compartment, two, until they are too far away to hear over the sound of the train. The sound of the train. You have been hearing it all along, of course, the rhythmic percussion of wheels on rails, a sound so fundamental to the experience of this journey that you had stopped consciously registering it. The way you stop consciously registering the sound of rain once you have been inside listening to it for long enough. But now, with the compartment quiet and the conductor gone and the dark outside the window continuing its passage, you hear it again. The pattern beneath everything else, the heartbeat of the journey, steady and unhurried and continuous. It is, you think, one of the better sounds in the world. Alibaby halt is exactly what its name suggests. A halt rather than a station, a pause rather than a destination. The platform is barely long enough for 2 carriages and has no building, only a shelter of corrugated perspex that was modern once, perhaps 30 years ago, and has since become something more like archaeology. Its surface opaque with age, one of its panels held in place by a cable tie of recent vintage. The train stops here for 4 minutes. You know this because the conductor has written the timetable in chalk on a small board inside the door of the carriage, a detail that charmed you when you first saw it and charms you again. Now, the chalk in an age of digital displays, the handwriting that is clearly accustomed to the task but retains the idiosyncrasy of genuine handwriting rather than collapsing into mere function. No one gets on at Alibaby halt. No one gets off. The train simply stops, breathes, and awaits out its 4 minutes in the way that trains at small stops have always waited. Not impatiently, not reluctantly, but with the particular patience of a thing that moves for most of its life and knows how to be still when stillness is called for. You look out at the platform. The perspex shelter is empty. Beyond the halt, the fields are invisible in the dark. And beyond the fields, somewhere in a direction you could not confidently name, there are presumably houses where people are doing the things people do on November evenings, cooking or reading or watching something on a screen or talking to each other about the ordinary and the necessary, children being put to bed, fires being banked, dishes being washed. The whole quiet texture of domestic life going on behind walls you cannot see, in warmth you cannot feel, at a distance you are passing through. You feel for all of it a tenderness that surprises you mildly, as genuine tenderness sometimes does when it arrives without announcement. The train begins to move again. Alibaby halt disappears into the dark behind you. There is a particular quality to the thinking that happens on long journeys at night. It is less directed than the thinking you do at a desk, less urgent than the thinking you do in the middle of other things, and different in kind from the thinking that happens in the moments before sleep, which tends toward the uncontrolled and the associative in ways that can be either creative or troubling depending on what the day has contained. Night train thinking is something else. It has the looseness of the half-asleep state without the loss of agency. You are still choosing, still following the thread, but more gently than you would in daylight, and with a willingness to let the thread lead you where it wants to go, rather than where you had planned to go. You think about the coast. You have been to Witstrand before, 3 times in fact, at different stages of your life. The first time you were young enough that the primary memory is sensory rather than narrative. The smell of salt and seaweed, and the particular cold that comes off the sea in spring, and the feeling of sand that was wet enough to be solid underfoot, and a red bucket that you were carrying for some purpose that has been lost to time. The second time you were older, and the trip was someone else's idea, and you spent most of it walking on the cliff path above the town and thinking about something that seemed very important at the time and has since settled into a perspective that is neither satisfying nor distressing, but simply the view from where you are now. The third time, you went alone, in autumn, and stayed for 3 days at a guest house, where the landlady left a thermos of tea outside your door each morning and asked no questions about why you were there or how long you intended to stay, a quality of discretion you valued more than you might have been able to explain at the time. You are not sure exactly why you are going this fourth time. The reasons you offered yourself in the days leading up to the journey, a change of scene, the sea air, the simple fact of having been somewhere different for a few days, are true in the way that practical reasons are often true, which is to say they are accurate but not quite sufficient. The real reason, if there is one, is something more like a feeling, a sense that Witstrand is a place where you have sometimes been able to set down things you have been carrying for too long without noticing their weight. The train moves through the dark. Your bag sits on the rack above you. Outside, something white, a barn, a tall building, a pale surface you cannot quite identify, appears in the darkness and is gone before you can decide what it was. You let it go. She appears in the corridor outside your compartment, the woman in the moss-coloured coat from the platform at Ashbourne Junction, sometime during the journey, walking slowly in the way of people who are not going anywhere in particular, but are glad to be moving. She has her paperback in her hand, finger in the page, as though she has been reading and got up mid-chapter and may or may not return to it. She glances in at your compartment. You have the light on, the small reading light above your seat, which you turned on after the darkness outside had fully asserted itself, and the compartment must appear warm from the corridor, which it is, the warmth of enclosed spaces in motion. She slides back the door. "Do you mind?" she asks, which is not quite a question, because she is already stepping in, but it is offered as one, politely, in the way of people who are accustomed to train journeys and their social grammar. "Not at all," you say. She sits across from you. She puts her book on the seat beside her, and the finger comes out of the page, and she does not immediately pick it up again. Outside the window, the darkness continues its passage. She looks at it for a moment, then back at you. "Witstrand?" she asks. "Yes," you say. "You?" "Caro Bay, the stop before." She settles further into the seat. "I used to take this train every month. Years ago. I stopped for a while, and then I thought..." She pauses. "Well, here I am." There is something in the pause that you recognize, the shape of a reason that is real but not easily stated, that exists in the space between practical explanations and the truth beneath them. You do not ask her to fill it in. She does not ask you to fill in yours. This is the other social grammar of night trains, the one that operates beneath the first, that certain things need not be explained, that the fact of she picks up her book again finds her. She picks up her book again, finds her place, settles into it. You look back out at the dark. You travel together in this way, in the easy parallel silence of people who have tacitly agreed not to require anything of each other for some time. The train rocks slightly. The reading light makes its small, warm claim against the dark. Somewhere further up the carriage, someone laughs once, briefly, and then there is quiet again. Dunore Cross is a proper station, small but proper, with a booking office whose windows are lit from within, and a flower bed on the platform that was attended to more recently than you might expect. There are still some late-blooming things in it, dark shapes with a little colour remaining, persistent against the season. 3 people get off here, a young couple who've been somewhere and are returning, or have returned and are going somewhere else. The nature of their journey unclear, but their ease with each other very clear. The way they move as a unit down the platform without needing to coordinate it. An older woman who is met at the end of the platform by a man with a torch who holds it up so she can see him. A gesture of such simple practicality and kindness that it stays with you after the train has moved on. One person gets on, a man of indeterminate age carrying a bicycle wheel and nothing else, who passes the door of your compartment with the focused air of someone who knows exactly where he is going and is going there without delay. He must have left at one of the smaller stops you passed later, though you did not notice him go. The woman in the moss-coloured coat looks up from her book as the train begins to move and watches the platform of Dunore Cross slide past. I grew up near here, she says, to no one in particular, or perhaps to you, or perhaps to the window. Another, country now. You do not ask what she means by this, because you know what she means by this. The places we grew up in are another country, not because they have changed, though they always have, but because we have. The same geography, a different self moving through it, and the distance between the two is not measurable in miles. The station disappears. She returns to her book. You watch the dark. There is a particular philosophy of stations, if you are the kind of person who travels enough to develop one. Stations are, at their best, places where the definition of who you are is temporarily suspended. In your ordinary life, at work, at home, in the places where you are known, you are legible, and people can read you. They know or think they know the significant facts, your name, your role, your history, your habits. This legibility is useful and often comforting, but it is also constraining, in the way that any definition constrains the thing it defines. At a station, particularly at a station late at night, when the day crowds have thinned and the remaining travellers are the ones going further, going late, going for reasons that are their own, the legibility dissolves a little. You are a person with a ticket and a bag. You are going somewhere. Beyond that, nothing is assumed. You are thinking this at Ashbourne Junction, watching the clock tick. You are thinking it again now, in the dark between Dunore Cross and wherever the train is taking you next. With the lamp on and the dark outside and the woman across from you engaged in her book and the whole carriage rocking slightly and the wheels making their steady argument with the rails. The suspension of legibility is one of the things you go on journeys for. Not the only thing. There is also the arriving, which has its own particular value, and the looking at new things, and the enforced rest of being in motion in a sealed vehicle with nothing to do but exist. But the suspension of legibility is not nothing. It is, in fact, one of the few ways available to an adult of becoming, briefly, unwritten. You have spent a portion of your life, you think, not resentfully, simply as a fact, becoming more and more written, more defined, more located in a specific set of circumstances that are yours and no one else's. This is, of course, what living does. Every choice made is a choice not made. Every path walked is a path walked rather than a path taken in the other direction. After a certain number of years, the accumulated weight of all these choices and paths is very specific and, in most ways, very yours. Not to be regretted, not to be escaped, but occasionally to be set down for a few hours in a train compartment going through the dark. The train passes through a small station without stopping. You catch a glimpse of the name but cannot read it. A name painted on a board, lit by a single light, gone before you have the chance to properly see it. The kind of station that is on the map but not on your route. The kind of place that exists very fully for the people who live near it and very barely for everyone else. You think about all the places that exist very fully for the people who live in them and very barely for everyone else, which is to say, all places, which is to say, everywhere. November has a particular quality that is different from any other month, and not only in the way that all months are different from each other. November is different in a specific and considered way. It is the month that most honestly represents what time feels like when time is going at its natural pace, rather than being hurried or celebrated or decorated into something else. In November, the days are short and the light is low, and the trees have mostly given up their leaves and the fields are the color of something that is finished. This is not sad, or not only sad. It is, in fact, the natural consequence of all the other months, the correct and expected ending of the cycle, the resting position that the year returns to after its period of extravagance. The flowers and the heat and the long evenings are extravagances, genuinely. Lavish departures from the moderate and the lasting, beautiful precisely because they are temporary. November is what remains when the extravagance is over, and what remains is, when you look at it honestly, not bad. A sky the color of pewter can be beautiful if you let it be. A bare tree is not a dead tree. It is a tree that has set down what it was carrying for the winter, that is resting in preparation for what it will do again in spring, doing what all sensible things do when the conditions call for it, not less, but differently. You are thinking about this because the dark outside the window is the dark of November, specifically, not the dark of deep winter, which has a harder quality, or the dark of summer, which is never quite complete, but the particular dark of November, which is comprehensive without being harsh, which has let the light go without regret and settled into itself. You have always found November easier than most people seem to. You are not sure exactly why this is. Something about its honesty, perhaps, its refusal to pretend, or something about the way it makes room for interior things, the way the shortness of the days turns attention inward and makes the life of the mind feel less like a retreat from the world and more like the appropriate activity for the season. The night train is a November thing, in its way. It does not make extravagant claims for itself. It goes where it is going, at the speed it goes, through the dark it moves through, and it does not apologize for any of these things, or try to make them other than they are. You like it very much. You close your eyes for a moment. The November dark continues, outside the window, going where it is going. At some point, you cannot say exactly when, you become aware that you have drifted, not into sleep precisely, but into that state adjacent to sleep that the moving train seems to produce in the way that certain rooms produce certain emotional states. A particular quality of warmth and motion and low sound that is very close to the experience of being rocked, which is a thing that the body remembers from much earlier than any specific memory can reach. In this state, which is not quite sleep, you are aware of things in the way that you are aware of things in the early stages of falling asleep, not sharply, not analytically, but with a kind of peripheral reception, as though the information is coming in through the edges rather than the center of your attention. The sound of the wheels, the slight rocking, the warmth of the compartment, the woman across from you, who has at some point also drifted, her book closed on her lap, her head resting against the window frame, her breathing slow and even. You think, or something in you thinks, which is not quite the same thing, about the train moving through the dark country, about all the places it is passing through that you are not seeing, about the fields and the rivers and the small roads and the hedges and the farms and the towns, all of them present in the dark outside the window, all of them complete in themselves, living their November lives at this very moment, entirely independent of whether anyone on this train is looking at them. There is something very settling about this thought. The world does not require your attention to continue. It is going on with great competence, whether you watch it or not. You can close your eyes. You can do this now. Really close them. Let the reading light become just a warmth on the back of your eyelids. And the train will continue, and the dark country will continue, and the conductor will make his rounds, and Witstrand will be there at the end of the line, waiting without impatience, because it has always been there and is in no hurry. Your breathing slows. The wheels on the rails say their rhythmic thing. You go somewhere that is not quite sleep and not quite waking. You stay there for a while, in the half-sleep between Dunore Cross and wherever the train is now. A memory arrives, not summoned, not sought, simply arriving, the way memories sometimes do when the conscious mind has relaxed its grip on the present long enough for the past to slip in through a side door. It is a memory of a morning, a specific morning, though the year is not precise, and the details shift slightly, depending on which angle you approach it from. The way certain old photographs appear different, depending on the light in which you hold them. What is constant? A window. Pale light, early, the particular grey-blue of early morning before the sun has committed to rising. The light that has always struck you as belonging specifically to that hour and no other. A cup of tea in your hands, not quite cool enough to drink yet. The sound of a bird some distance away, doing something insistent and cheerful that seemed, at the time, addressed specifically to you. You were happy that morning. Not dramatically happy. Nothing had happened. No news had arrived. No particular problem had been resolved. It was simply a morning in which you had woken early and made tea and stood at the window and been, without particularly choosing it, happy. The happiness of being alive at that hour in that light with that bird somewhere out there insisting on his cheerful business. You have thought about that morning many times over the years. Not obsessively, not with any agenda. It has simply come back to you at intervals as a reference point, as evidence of something that you are not entirely sure how to name. That happiness of the uncaused variety is real, that it arrives on its own terms and cannot be manufactured, but can be made available to by the simple act of slowing down enough to receive it. The night train, you think, or something in you thinks, from the comfortable depth of the half-sleep, is a version of that slowing down. Not the same thing, but in the same family of things. The act of putting yourself in motion at a speed that is not hurried, in a direction that requires nothing of you, through a darkness that asks only that you look at it, without demanding it explain itself. The bird is out there somewhere, in the dark fields going past the window. It is not singing at this hour, but it is there. There is a taxonomy of train sounds, if you have been on enough trains to develop one. The sound of this train, the night train, the slow train, the one that takes the long way, is distinct from the sounds of faster trains, and distinct within itself depending on what the train is doing and where it is. On a straight stretch of track, the rhythm is even, a steady percussion, 2 beats per rail join, consistent enough to be almost musical, almost restful, in the way that very regular sounds become restful once the brain has stopped monitoring them for variation. This is the sound that underlies everything else, the ground note of the journey. On a curve, the rhythm shifts. The wheels speak differently on the curved rail, a slightly higher register, a little more urgency in the sound, as though the train is making a small additional effort, which it is, the physics of it, requiring a different distribution of force, the outer wheels working harder than the inner. You can hear this effort, and it is not unpleasant. It is the sound of something working correctly, adapting to the shape of what is required of it, on a gradient, going up, or more often at this point in the journey going very slightly down toward the sea. The engine's contribution becomes more audible, the low thrum beneath the percussion of the wheels, the sound of something with genuine power moving at a considered fraction of its capacity, like a person walking slowly who could run if they needed to, but has no need to. Going over points, the sound is briefly complicated, a staccato interruption of the regular rhythm, several rapid variations, and then the steady percussion resumes, picking up where it left off with the confidence of something that knows its own pattern. And then there is the sound the train makes in tunnels, which is different from all the others. The sound of enclosed space, the sudden amplification, and the sense of compression, the way the world beyond the window becomes absolute darkness for a few seconds, and the sound becomes the only landscape. Tunnels on night trains are almost indistinguishable from the world outside them. Already dark, already enclosed. And yet there is something about them, a quality of attention they demand, a brief heightening of the senses that resolves when the tunnel ends into the relief of open air and the wide dark again, which feels, after the tunnel, very wide indeed. You have been listening to all of this without knowing you were listening. This is one of the things the night train teaches, if you are willing to be taught, that the body is paying attention even when the mind has wandered, that the ears are working even in sleep, that the world is always making sounds, and you are always, at some level below the level of consciousness, receiving them. He comes through the carriage again sometime later. You are not sure how much later. Time having taken on the elastic quality it acquires in the state between sleep and waking, and his footsteps in the corridor are quiet enough not to disturb, but present enough to draw you back gently to the near side of consciousness. You watch him through the glass of the compartment door as he passes. He moves with the economical certainty of someone who knows a space very well. Each slight adjustment of his weight as the train rocks, each easy reach for the overhead rail on the turns, each brief glance into each compartment, not intrusive, just present. The glance of someone who is responsible for the well-being of the people in his care and exercises that responsibility quietly. He has done this journey, you imagine, many hundreds of times. He knows the order of the stops in the way that you know the routes between familiar rooms in the dark, not by seeing them, but by a kind of internal map that the body has made through repetition. He knows which passengers tend to sleep before Dunore Cross and which stay awake to the end. He knows the bridge over the river and the long curve before Alibaby halt, and the particular vibration the third carriage makes going over the points at Caro Bay. He knows the train in the way that people who have spent a great deal of time with a thing sometimes come to know it. Not just its function and its mechanics, but its character, the small ways it behaves like itself. You have met people who know their boats this way and their instruments. And in one case, a woman who made watches, who spoke about the particular movements of a particular watch with an attention and affection that was clearly something more than professional interest. There is a kind of knowledge that comes only from time and repetition and genuine attention, and it is different in quality from the knowledge that comes from study or from talent or from brief intense experience. It is patient knowledge. It knows things that other kinds of knowledge cannot reach because it has waited for them. It has done the journey in all weathers, at all hours, through all the variations that time produces, and it has allowed those variations to accumulate into something that is, in the end, a kind of wisdom. You wonder, briefly, what the conductor thinks about on these journeys, whether he still sees the landscape, whether the dark country outside the window is, for him, specific and familiar in a way it cannot be for a passenger, or whether the repetition has made it abstract. A general dark, a general countryside, the specific details averaged out over 1,000 passages into something that is less a place and more a feeling. You decide, without much evidence, but with a feeling of confidence, that he still sees it, that the kind of person who becomes a conductor on a night train is the kind of person for whom a thing that is seen many times remains a thing worth seeing, that he looks at the bridge over the river on his 500th crossing of it with something that is not quite the astonishment of the first crossing, but is not nothing. The conductor passes out of sight down the corridor. The train goes over the bridge. Below, briefly, you glimpse, or perhaps you imagine that you glimpse, the same river you saw earlier, or a different river, running through the dark with the same silver patience. The woman in the moss-coloured coat gathers herself before the station appears. This is the skill of experienced travellers, a kind of internal knowledge that the stop is coming, a waking before the announcement, a slow collection of self before the train slows. You watch her put her book into the bag she has retrieved from the rack, button her coat to the second button, then the third. She looks out of the window at the approaching lights of Caro Bay, the first real lights in some time, the lights of a town that knows it is a town. Safe onward, she says, which is not quite a standard farewell, but is precise in the way that precise people sometimes are. She means it exactly, the safe part and the onward part, both. And you say. She stands, slides open the door, and moves down the corridor toward the exit. You watch the lights of Caro Bay slow and stop outside the window. The station platform has a newsagent still open at this hour, its yellow light spilling onto the platform like something warm poured out. A few passengers on the platform waiting, a few leaving the train. Brief intersections of journeys, people who will never know each other but who shared this moment of arrival and departure before dispersing into their separate nights. The train waits. You are now, you realize, the last passenger on this service going to Witstrand. The man in the grey suit must have left at some stop you didn't register. The girl with the headphones. The man with the bicycle wheel. You did not see them go, which is characteristic of night train journeys. People are present, and then they are not. Their departures as quiet as their presences, absorbed into the general motion and the dark. The last passenger. There is something in this phrase that is not lonely, but is adjacent to aloneness. The good adjacency, the kind that feels like space rather than absence. You have the carriage to yourself now. The reading light is still on. The seat across from you still holds faintly the impression of a coat the color of old moss. The train begins to move. Caro Bay disappears behind you. There is nothing left between you and Witstrand but the last stretch of dark country and the sound of the wheels and the patient motion of the train going where it is going at exactly the speed it has decided upon. The country between Caro Bay and Witstrand is the kind of country that knows it is approaching the sea. You cannot see this in the dark. You cannot see anything precisely in the dark, but you can sense a change in the quality of the air that comes through the ventilation of the carriage. Something that was not there earlier, a hint of something mineral and cold and large. The dark outside the window is different too, in a way that is difficult to name. Not lighter, not more varied, but somehow more open, as though the landscape on the other side of the glass has taken a step back to give itself more room. The train slows, slightly, on a long, shallow grade. You can feel it in the way you feel all changes in a train's movement when you have been on it long enough, in the adjustment of your own weight, in the subtle shift in the sound the wheels make, in something proprioceptive and below the level of conscious thought. This is the last part of the journey. You have been on this train for several hours now. Your bag is on the rack above you. Your coat is draped over your knees like a blanket, which it has become without your deliberately arranging it that way. The reading light is still on. You are very close now to sleep. Not the night train approximation you have been in for a while, but actual sleep, the real thing. Your body having been held in warmth and motion long enough to decide that sleep is the appropriate next step. You think about the guest house in Witstrand. You do not know which one you will stay at. You did not book in advance, which is something you used to not do on principle and have lately started doing again. The principle having something to do with the value of arriving somewhere without having already decided what it will be. You know only that there will be a room, because Witstrand in November is not the kind of place that runs out of rooms. There will be a bed and the sound of the sea, which in November will be louder than in summer, the waves having more force behind them, the beach having fewer things on it to absorb their energy. You will sleep to the sound of the sea. But not yet. For a little longer, there is this, the train, and the dark, and the last slow miles between where you have been and where you are going, and the particular quality of this suspended time, which belongs to neither place and is therefore, in a sense, only its own. A country whose borders are the moment of departure and the moment of arrival, and whose interior is exactly as long as the journey. You find yourself thinking, in the half-sleep of the last hour, about all the things that move through the dark while most people sleep. Trains, obviously. Not only this one, there are, even now, hundreds of trains moving through the dark in every country where trains run, carrying their passengers and their freight through the night, across bridges and through tunnels and along coastal cliff paths that would be breathtaking to see in daylight and are now only sound and vibration, felt rather than seen. Ships on the sea. The sea is full of ships at night, container vessels and tankers and fishing boats and the occasional passenger ferry, all of them with their lights, all of them following their own known routes through water that is very much older than any route ever plotted across it. The water does not know about the ships. The ships, in a sense that the crews would not particularly appreciate, do not alter the sea. Animals. Foxes in the fields outside this window right now. You are nearly certain of this. Moving along paths they know by the kind of knowledge that does not require thinking. Paths worn into the grass by generations of foxes who also moved through these fields in the dark before any train ran through them, before any road crossed them, before any map named them. The fields contain all of this, untroubled. Rivers running. Rivers do not sleep. They are perhaps the one thing in the landscape that is less different at night than anything else, moving through the dark with the same current and the same sound they have in daylight, the same cold patience, the same indifference to whether they are seen or not. Rivers know something that most things do not know, which is that visibility is not the same as existence. The wind moving through the trees that are out there in the dark outside this window. You cannot hear the wind from inside the train. The sound of the train is too present for that. But it is there, turning the last leaves in the oak trees and bending the long grass in the fields and lifting very slightly the surface of standing water in ditches and ponds and the small reservoirs that dot this part of the country. All of this is happening right now, outside the window of the train you are on. You are not separate from any of it. You are moving through it, carried by the train, warmed by your coat, heading toward the sea that all these rivers are also heading toward, in their own slow and patient way. This thought, which is very simple, produces in you something that is not quite peace and not quite happiness, but is a feeling that is at least as useful as either of those things. A sense of being correctly located, not in this seat on this train specifically, but in the world, in the moving dark, in the night that belongs to all of these things at once. The conductor appears at the compartment door. His knock is very soft, a professional knock, the knock of someone who is performing a necessary function, but is aware that the person on the other side of the glass may be asleep and does not want to be the instrument of an abrupt awakening. Witstrand in 10 minutes, he says, when you slide back the door. End of the line. Thank you. You say. He looks at you for a moment. Or perhaps you look at him. It is one of those exchanges where the looking is mutual and brief and contains something that is not quite information, but it's not nothing either. The acknowledgement, perhaps, of having shared a journey, of having both been part of the same movement through the dark, each in your own way. Him with his notebook and his chalkboard and his professional attention to the well-being of the passengers. You with your bag on the rack and your coat over your knees and the dark country going past the window. It was a good journey, you say. He considers this with what seems like genuine consideration rather than reflexive agreement. Yes, he says at last. It was. He moves on. You retrieve your bag from the rack. Put your coat back on, button it. You look at the window, outside, and this is the first time you have seen it, the first clear evidence of it. There is the sea, or rather, there is the absence of everything else. The fields and the hedgerows and the distant farmhouse lights are gone, and what remains is a darkness that is larger than the previous darkness, deeper with a different texture, and at the very edge of what the train's lights illuminate, there is white. The tops of waves breaking, the sea making its case in the dark with the same force it makes it in daylight, undiminished. You press your forehead very lightly against the cool glass of the window. The sea is there. The train slows. The platform at Witstrand is the end of something. It has the quality that all terminal platforms have, a slight increase in weight, a sense of culmination, but with the particular addition of the sea, which you can smell the moment the doors open, a smell that is cold and large and old, that takes the inside air of the carriage and replaces it with something that is not quite comfortable, but is very awake. You step down onto the platform. The station is small, as befits a town at the end of a line. There are a few others on the platform. A woman being greeted by a man who has been waiting. A young man walking fast toward the exit with the purposeful stride of someone who knows exactly where they are going and is pleased to be going there. A porter with a trolley who is not doing anything in particular, but whose presence is reassuring. The way the presence of certain people is reassuring simply by its competence. You walk the length of the platform slowly. Your bag is on your shoulder. The sea smell deepens as you walk toward the exit, as though the town beyond the station gates is gradually revealing itself in olfactory terms before anything else. You pass the conductor at the far end of the platform. He is talking to the station master, a brief professional conversation, something about the return journey tomorrow. And he nods at you as you pass. You nod back. That is all. It is sufficient. You go through the gate. The town of Witstrand opens itself to you in the dark. A high street with a few lights still on. A chippy whose warm smell immediately competes with the sea smell and does not quite win. A pub from which music comes faintly. Something slow and sung. A woman's voice carrying a tune that you cannot quite catch, but that sounds, from this distance, like something worth going closer to hear. You do not go closer. Not tonight. Tonight, you will find the guest house, and the room, and the bed, and through the window, if the room is the right room, which you feel confident it will be, because you have a history with this town, and the right rooms tend to present themselves. Through the window, you will be able to hear the sea. The guest house is called the Meridian, which you know because you passed it once on an earlier visit. and noted it without stopping. A white-painted house on a side street, 2 minutes from the seafront, its sign lit by a small lamp above the door. The kind of establishment that has been run by the same family for long enough that the decor inside is a palimpsest of several decades, each layer making more sense in its original moment than it does now, but the whole being somehow more comfortable than any of the individual parts would suggest. You find it without difficulty. This is one of the things about Witstrand that you remember now and have always remembered. It is a town in which you can find things without difficulty, not because it is particularly well laid out or well signed, but because it has a quality of being navigable, of giving you enough information to find your way, without requiring you to know exactly where you are going before you set out. The door of the meridian is unlocked. A small bell chimes when you open it. From somewhere inside comes the sound of a television at low volume and the smell of something that was baked earlier in the day and left its warmth in the hall. You have arrived. The journey is over, and the night is very quiet, and the sea is doing what the sea always does, which is to be there and to be large and to be going on and going on past any individual moment of arrival or departure, past any train journey or any particular night, past everything that is temporary and personal and specific, with a patience that is beyond patience, beyond anything that can be named with a word that is also used for human qualities. You stand in the hallway of the meridian for a moment. You breathe in, you let it out. And now, dear listener, the train has arrived. The journey is complete. The platform at Witstrand, the sea smell, the station lights going off one by one as the station closes for the night. All of it is settling, becoming the soft furniture of a story that has been told and can now be rested in. You do not need to go anywhere now. The passenger has arrived. The conductor has completed his rounds. The night train is at rest on the last track, its engine cooling slowly, making the small ticking sounds that metal makes when it is releasing the heat of its work, which is an honest and unhurried sound. The conductor's chalkboard still lists the route of a journey already completed. The compartments are empty. The reading light in compartment C is the last to go off. The conductor has gone along the carriage and switched them all off, and this one was last. And now it is dark, and the carriage is quiet, and the train rests in the dark station with the patience of a thing that has arrived. Outside the station at Witstrand, the sea is doing what it was always going to do tonight, which is to move against the shore with the measured authority of something that has been doing this for a very long time and expects to be doing it long after any of tonight's arrivals and departures have become memory and then become nothing at all. The waves come in and they go out and they come in again. The tide is going out now, or perhaps it is coming in. The sea keeping its own account of these things, not consulting anyone. In a room on the first floor of the meridian, with a window that faces east and will catch the first light tomorrow morning, if there is any light to catch, you are settling in the way that travelers settle after a journey, slowly, gratefully, with a particular physical gratitude of a body that has been held in one position for several hours and is now being invited to extend and rest and let go of the careful economy of posture that a train seat requires. The bed is old and the mattress has a slight lean to one side, and the pillow smells of a laundry that takes its work seriously. Through the window, you can hear the sea. Not loudly. This room is 2 streets back from the front, and the sound comes filtered through stone walls and the intervening air of the November night. But clearly, the rhythm of it, the coming and going, the thing that does not stop. Let the night train be there, in the back of your mind, at the end of its line. Let it sit in the dark, stationed at Witstrand, with its amber lights dimmed and its carriages empty, and the conductor's chalkboard still listing the route for a journey already completed. It will be there when it needs to be. It has been there before. It will be there again. Let the conductor be there too, on the platform perhaps, finishing his notes in the small leather notebook, or walking toward the station master's office to hand in his board for the evening, or simply standing for a moment in the November air, the way a person sometimes stands for a moment at the end of a long day before turning toward home. He has done his job. He has taken care of the passengers. He has brought them safely, each to their own particular end of the line. Let the woman in the moss-coloured coat be home now, or arriving. Let her have found what she went to Caro Bay for, or let her be in the process of finding it, which is the same thing at a slightly earlier stage. Let her paperback be on the table by the bed, open to the page she stopped at on the train, which is always further into the book than you expect, because reading on night trains has a particular efficiency to it. The mind, released from its usual distractions, settles into the page with a completeness that ordinary reading rarely achieves. Let the dark country be dark, as it always is at this hour. Let the fields be fields. Let the river run silver under whatever sky it runs under tonight, clouded or clear. It does not matter to the river, which has its own direction and follows it without reference to what is above it or who might be watching from a train window. Let Alibaby halt be empty, its perspex shelter standing in the dark, holding its space on the map with the modest dignity of small things that persist. Let everything be as it is. Your breathing is slower now. The journey has done what journeys do when they are the right kind. It has carried you somewhere, not only to a place on a map, but to a place in yourself that is harder to reach by any other means. The place where things can be set down, where the weight of what you have been carrying can be acknowledged and then gently released. You have been on the night train. You have watched the dark go past the window. You have arrived at the end of the line, which is not an ending, but a pause, the place where one direction of travel becomes another, where the journey outward becomes, eventually, the journey back. But not yet, not tonight. Tonight there is only the room and the sea and the dark and the bed with its slight lean and its serious laundry, and the knowledge that tomorrow the light will come through the east window, and there will be the whole coast to walk if you want to walk it, and a town to be briefly in, and the guest house kitchen from which even now, at this hour, from 2 floors below, comes the distant and improbable smell of something that will be breakfast. Sleep is already here. It has been waiting for you, the way the town of Witstrand waits for the night train, without impatience, without anxiety, with only the steady and reliable quality of something that knows it will come, that has always come, that is already, even now, coming in. The sea keeps its rhythm outside the window. The train is at rest at the end of the line. The conductor has gone home. You are in the right room, in the right town, at the right end of the right journey. Let yourself be carried. The tide is coming in. Sleep